Welcome to the Wealth Rebel Show. I am your very rebellious host, Emma Wright, and today I am bringing a guest that is so aligned with my views on the world, on wealth, on life that I just had to share him with you. I had the great pleasure of connecting with you, Tyrone, through Business Fest Southwest as a speaker. We were invited on to Ashley Leeds podcast, which is where we connected. And I was like, hearing you talk, I was like, oh my goodness, I just resonate so much with all the things that you were talking about. And honestly, I was like a nodding dog, like, yes, yes, like people need to hear this message. And given my focus on my show, I like people to hear about alternative assets, different things that they can invest into, especially, and you just said this off air, the world is buoyant right now. We have all sorts of trumps going on. We don't know what's coming. I get asked all the time, all the time, kind of, is now the right time to invest? Yeah, it is often the right time to invest, but also to learn about alternative ways of investing too. And this is where often precious metals comes into play. I'm making roots in the Southwest, and from my connections as well, my connections are international, but I'm knowing a lot of more people in the Southwest. And so it's amazing for me also to support a business that has put roots into the Southwest, especially in the investment community. And that's another reason why I wanted you to come onto the show. So, quite frankly, this show is all about connecting people with the people that they need to know so that they can build wealth their way, invest in all assets, but have knowledge, the knowledge of knowing why they might want to connect with people like you, Tyrone. So without further ado, welcome to the Wealth Rebel Show.
Well, thank you, Emma. It was an absolute pleasure. And I think when we first sort of met on the Ashley Lead show, exactly the same. I wasn't aware, of what you did, and was very sort of my eyes were open quite wide when you definitely talked about, what does wealth mean, and how is wealth produced. So yeah, absolute pleasure, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Why don't we just dive straight into that? Because we're going to go deep into kind of what you do at AU Bullion. We're going to talk about gold and Trump and all of that. But let's firstly just kind of dive into that kind of topic. What if you were to define wealth, what does wealth mean to you on that holistic basis?
Look, I think as I've got a little bit older and wiser, as they say, I think it's changed. I think we're conditioned at an early age to think wealth is all about money, and career success. So and that certainly was the case with me. I started and left school, and joined the army, ironically, because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think a lot of people at that age are in a very similar position. But I do feel now with social media, there's a lot more options and there's a lot more exposure to different parts of different industries, as well. But certainly for me, I felt the right decision was to join the army at 16. Thoroughly enjoyed that. And then fell in the world of telecoms. And that's where I spent most of my career, making my way up through the leadership chain and talking about what the success looked like. I felt that was my idea of success and wealth, because climbing the corporate chain felt like the right thing to do. And yes, it gave me some great experiences. It exposed me to different people, different parts of business. So that's definitely stood me in good stead to where I am now. And I met some wonderful people. So I think when you navigate a career like networking, it's really important that you meet those right people, have those right conversations, and really engage with people in all the right ways. I think certainly in the corporate world, it can feel like you're shoulder to shoulder with people and having to muscle people out the way. Fortunately for me, that certainly wasn't the case. I use people as building blocks, and I like to think myself as a bit of a magpie. So I like to pinch all the shiny bits and bright ideas from individuals, but also recognizing what works and what doesn't work. So as I climbed the corporate ladder through a very large telecoms company, most people are aware of it, BT. I just sort of navigated and went to different parts of the organization. I suppose that is the beauty of a large business. You can migrate from one side to another and develop different skills. But what I just really felt, Emma, was that I wasn't getting what I didn't realize was that itch. Right? There was an itch there to be scratched, and I didn't really understand what that looked like. But I'd grown up around gold in the investment world because my dad is fully immersed in the industry. But being rebellious, I didn't want to follow in his footsteps, and I wanted to make my own way.
Love that.
So that's why I did this. But there was something always gravitating me back to the industry, and fortunately enough, had always embraced physical gold, and that as an investment type because I was conditioned very early on to understand alternatives. Whereas I think people nowadays aren't really conditioned to understand that, which is absolutely fine. So as I've sort of developed through BT, my business partner Barry, we had known each other for 18 years, and we had come full circle. He went his way, I went my way, and as we met full circle, we just felt that there was going to be a gap in the market because of primarily since COVID. And I'm not saying this is the case for every business, but certainly businesses we were interacting with in the industry, it felt very transactional. It felt like that personal service, that educational journey that I felt so valuable in the start, it sort of diminished slightly. And whether I'm not sure whether that's because there's a lack of face to face, whether there's a lack of communication skills that haven't sort of been translated and passed down. But we felt there was a gap in the market. And we would never have ever thought of the market would go as crazy as it has, which we're fortunate it has. But we can't have said we've sort of foreseen that. But what we did feel there was a niche there that we could develop an organization within the industry. And I'm glad you mentioned about settling roots here in the Southwest. We've consciously gone with AU Bullion Southwest because we want people to recognize that investment or anything of that nature doesn't have to be based in London. You can interact, you can talk with people outside of the capital with the same level of confidence, with the same level of capability, and have an alternative, have a change. So what we pretty much try to achieve is, and what we set out to achieve at AU Bullion Southwest is to do exactly that: create an environment which is based around education, based around people being able to speak to us and the team on a real individual basis, creating a unique journey. And sometimes, whether it's just advice or just a point in the right direction, sometimes that's all what someone needs, and it doesn't necessarily have to be with us. So it's more about, sounds quite cliche, we feel like it's all about trying to give as much as we possibly can, and as a byproduct we feel that we will receive.
100%. When you create what people need, you're going to attract in the people that want you. And often and this is why I wanted to bring you on the show. It's just people having the awareness that you're there in the first place is really, really important, which is why your networks are so important. But something you said, which I just love, this is like touching on my rebellious streak, is that you felt that you were rebellious by going against kind of maybe what you were born into. And that's so interesting because a lot of people they do like the opposite. Like they go into what it is that they were born into. And then they feel like they're constantly having to rebel to get away from that or kind of like go against the grain to come to like what they were born to do.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you feel like this rebellious kind of, you went away and you went against the grain. But fundamentally, in doing that, you've fully enhanced what it is that now you've come back into to the market of doing something with alternative assets like gold, right? You've come back into kind of the family tradition, but you've brought all of these bright ideas. I love the fact that you talked about being that magpie and bringing in all of the things that you've learned. Do you know what? We get really kind of we bash the magpie, right, for stealing things.
Yes.
It is not stealing. When you're going through life, you are in this, especially in your early life, blessed, aren't we, to learn to learn from other people, to take ideas. We're like sponges, just like a map, right? Taking things in. And it's like, gathering all of this beautiful knowledge to then one day go and go, okay, I've got all this knowledge, but I've also got a foundation of this family, kind of heritage in the gold world to kind of bring in and tap it in. So I just love that. I think that's a wonderful kind of way, and it gives you muscle. It gives you that muscle and that strength because you in the army you learn skills that are so different to what you can ever learn in corporate. And I think that gives you real strength to bring a business that is going to be so transformative. And they're going right back to the first question that I asked you of what wealth means to you. The word that I circled is options.
Mm.
Options is a very trading word in my world as
Yeah,
well. You get
yes, of
options
course,
on
yes.
gold. Wealth is options because it gives people options to do something different. And, you know, having gold in your portfolio, when you look at the trajectory of where gold has gone, yes, we have volatility. Yes, we have times when you might want to buy it because it's viewed as a safe haven, but fundamentally it goes up and up and up and up and up and up and up over time. So it's a buy and hold as well. It's not something for just having in to make a quick buck. So let's dive deeper into gold. Let's dive deeper into why it's an asset for the moment in this buoyant world. What's going on in the world at the moment that's driving
Um,
the gold market?
So I think there's a lot going on really, and what I do like to do really is try to keep things very simple. I think when we talk about markets and commodities and trading, I think a lot of people get caught up in complexity. They try to overcomplicate scenarios. They try to complicate forecasts, etc. What I've tried to fundamentally look at is what's happened in the past. So we've got that core piece of data, and fundamentally, what does it mean? But I think a lot of people do forget that gold used to be our currency once upon a time. So
Yes.
it's always been a staple of our economy, not just here in the UK, but across the world. And again, it's a part of a lot of people's cultures as well. So India, China. This is something that our youngsters, so people that are brought up around gold and those sort of physical metals. So I think if we talk about the UK, I think we've just sort of lost the understanding, and we've become more conditioned to using traditional methods like banks.
Mm.
And when I talk about banks, I think banks are something that we all have to have, unfortunately, um, because of this day and age, bills, payments. There's a number of other things that we use banks for on a daily basis. But I think people still hold them in high regard as institutes, which they're not. They see them as authorities, which they're not.
Yeah.
So we just need to recognize that. So, when we're being challenged with regards to withdrawing money or putting money into a bank, these questions they're asking, of course they have to. But what we need to also remember, that's fundamentally our decision to put it where we want to put it. So the reason why I'm talking about that is that's what's starting to spark a bit of interest within the world now. People are becoming more aware of their options. People are
Yes.
becoming more aware of what banks really are, and also how they can look at other options of saving. So not just
Touch on that,
um,
Tyrone, because I think you've said something that's so interesting that I want to go deeper on because
okay,
gold used to be the currency. And currencies were connected to gold. And then we had a debasing of the currency. And currencies were then stripped away. So gold is, and one of the beautiful things of why gold is a currency, you can buy things with gold, you can trade with gold. Bitcoin is like a new currency. And it's an interesting concept. And we're not going to go down the Bitcoin train today because that's a whole different kind of worms. But one thing that you talked about that I feel really, really passionate about bringing to life, which is why currency and FX and all of that for me is where people can then see the value of gold. And I see the beautiful value of gold. In the 40s, we we started to strip out gold, like gold became separate from currency. And then we had the US dollar, and then all the currencies around it connected fundamentally to what happens to the US dollar, right? And then I believe we entered into a currency war. I remember reading that book many years ago. And what happens with currency now, with US, with UK, right? We have this ability to just print money, to borrow and print. What happens then to your pound or your dollar? Year on year, it loses value. So you have currency in your bank account. I wish I had a pound coin to hand, right? I've got my pound coin. I'm getting passionate here. I've got my pound coin, and you put that in your bank account to keep it safe, where they pay you a pittance in interest, right? It's losing value day after day after day, literally losing value. When you look at the financial markets, it's losing about 10% a year. Oh my goodness. We're literally getting poorer by holding on to currency, right? But we're told that it's inflation, and inflation's really good because then we've got a buoyant economy and we're chasing GDP. Nonsense, right? Fundamentally, the banks are then holding on to our currency because what are they doing? They're going and using it to trade it to make money with your money.
Yes.
Gold. We then buy gold. Gold is genuinely something that is pretty finite. Yes, we can go and dig for more, but it's really, we can dig for more. We can mine for more gold, but fundamentally, it's not like printing money. It becomes an asset that is a currency that you can own in different ways, and I'd love to know more about this, but it becomes something that this is why over time it is an asset that holds on to its value as real currency. And this is why I believe more people are realizing, they're opening their eyes and they're saying, well, I want to hold physical gold. I don't have any physical gold at the minute. I have silver coins in my safe, right at home, that I bought through the raw mint, right? So I feel really passionate about people understanding just what you just said about that. So gold is an asset. It used to be a currency. It's something that we should really take note of, not just gold, but other precious metals. Tell me a little bit more about that. Let's go deep.
So yeah, so look, ultimately, one of the first things I ask my clients when we first meet is, do you understand why gold increase in value? And a lot of people will say because they've read a piece of information on the websites, on Google, but ultimately say it's due to political turmoil, economical turmoil. That's a catalyst, but it's ultimately supply and demand. Where, like with any economy, where the demand, okay, outweighs the supply, it will increase in value. And to touch on what you said, Emma, there isn't an infinite amount. Mining exploration is becoming more expensive. They're having to search harder, dig harder, and therefore the demand is far outweighing the supply. When you look at, like you said, mentioning around inflation, if you were to continue to print gold, you would be increasing the amount available, hence why printing more money, currency. Once they start to print more money, that's why we're seeing it becoming more damning against sort of inflation. So ultimately, to keep it really basic, as I said at the beginning, it's supply and demand. There's a huge demand for what precious metal, us being gold. So therefore, that's why we're seeing prices increase. We do see the price of gold being influenced by ETF. There's a number of different ETF types. So I'm not going to go into detail, but an ETF is basically a share of gold. And there's all different types of ETFs available on the market. So if you were interested in purchasing gold, but didn't want the physical commodity as a part of your portfolio, or you want a combination of both, a lot of people do like having a share and something tangible in their hand. What I would suggest is to understand your circumstances. You could either come speak to us and see what works for you, or there is lots and lots of useful information if you just type in ETF gold.
Let's talk about that because I used to be a trader, right? I used to trade options, ETF, exchange traded fund. So I was thinking the way that I love to break this down is You can have direct ownership or you can have indirect ownership because not
Correct.
everyone wants the physical asset. More people are going, I want physical ownership. More people are going to the Royal Mint and buying coins
Absolutely.
and having physical gold. They have it, it's like they love it. It's like having their house because they can touch it, right? But not everyone wants to take physical ownership of something. Some people just want exposure to the market. The market is where they have access to the gold, the price of gold. And the way that you do that is through an exchange traded fund and the beautiful thing of an exchange traded fund is that you can do it through your ISAs, through your pensions, through your apps. It's really easy to trade. It's not so easy to go, okay, I've got my gold bar, right? I want to sell it back to the Royal Mint. It's more effort to have direct ownership, just like it's more effort to have a property that you have to maintain. You have to you have full responsibility for your gold. If you lose your gold coin, sorry, tough shit, right? You can't lose your ETF, like you kind of usually do it through a really respectable platform or an exchange, and there is that level of kind of security in that. So I think I love to kind of help people to understand,
Yeah.
what we mean by kind of ETFs, exchange traded fund, where someone is managing that for you. One thing that I did want to touch on, what you said, around what people perceive gold to kind of, gold exposure to be. Okay, it's a flight to safety because there's buoyancy in the market. That's just volatility. That's the day-to-day noise that, a lot of people will go, okay, I'm selling the stock market to go and buy gold. And that creates some short-term volatility. And what does volatility create? It might not be a good time to buy gold in a turbulent market, actually, because the price has gone up and then it falls. When the markets are going up, actually, when the stock market is going up, there might be some people selling some of their gold. Then that's a good time to market. We should do the inverse, right? Behavioral finance is sometimes when we do the inverse, but fundamentally, there's going to be demand for a finite asset. And, we we're really kind of buy and hold investors really in the long term because
I
tracking the markets is something that we don't want to always be doing, right? So,
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone's circumstances are different. And that's why, we always say, look at diversification. So life's about balance. So making sure that balance works for your circumstances, making sure that balance works for your strategy. A lot of people lose sight of the strategy and goal because they get caught up in the moment. So it's about planning. And that's when we talk to our clients, is that we fundamentally want to really understand their personal circumstances, their professional circumstances, but more importantly, their strategies and goals. So that way we can then plan and help support them with that decision making. So ultimately, ETF, as you quite rightly put, that offers one benefit. Physical gold offers a number of other benefits, but there's a lot of pension providers now which have SIPs that are allowing you to put physical gold into your pension. So there's a number of large providers now that are recognizing this as well. And also with British coins, as most people are aware of, as we start to speak to them, but aren't aware of if you haven't been exposed to it, is British coins in the UK are totally tax-free. So you pay zero VAT and zero capital gains tax. So if you're looking to mitigate some tax exposure from one proportion of your portfolio, that's something that might be a part of a long-term strategy to avoid those peaks and troughs, as you quite rightly put, Emma. Gold can be classed as volatile depending on what microscope you put on it. You
yes.
look at it day to day and you're a trader, it's volatile. If you're someone that's looking to hold it over a period of time, it's probably the least volatile commodity you can purchase. So again, it's all about understanding the needs, really scraping past the noise of I want to invest because right, yeah, let's all invest, but let's understand what that means. Because again, we'll even be to the point where it's actually like physical probably isn't right for you right now, and we'll put push them in the direction of what we feel is right because we just feel that being able to give them that honest feedback from that perspective will benefit them long term. And remember when I talked about, it's better to sort of give as much, and then naturally you'll then receive when that time comes. They may look at a physical commodity further down the line.
The great thing is, though, and this is something because the reason that the tax efficiency applies with the coins is because they're coins, they're currency. So
Yeah,
it's
legal
just
tender.
like there's no capital gains, there's no VAT. You can just buy a coin. And one of the things that I love about it is you could buy a silver coin for 30 quid. So I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna do, and this is where diversification comes into play, right? And this is why I just love these conversations because it gets people seeing investment in such a different way where they can have fun with it and take ownership of all these different things. Is that you can have your pensions and you can then utilize a part of your pension to invest into, as you said, physical if you wanted through a SIP. But as you're building wealth, you could buy some ETFs if you're trading it yourself. You could even do it through you guys. I'm sure like this is the thing. You can provide this guidance and advice to put some of your pension into a gold ETF, which is a fantastic hedge. I'm a big advocate of not using bonds as a hedge because but people use bonds as a hedge against the stock market when it's like it just doesn't make sense for me. And I've gone into that in many conversations in the past as to why bonds are not a risk reducer in certain circumstances, whereas gold is in that sense because the stock market goes, gold goes up. There's your hedge, right?
Yeah.
And within a portfolio, it creates a great way of mitigating risk in that essence. But also, like you say, you could also do it as a different investment in a different kind of platform that you take sovereignty of as well. Whilst a big part of your wealth is being managed. Diversification is not just about diversifying across stocks. It's diversifying against lots of things for yourself as well. And like I say, I literally, if I've got a spare £30, I might buy a silver coin, or if I've got a spare 100 and odd quid, I know the price of gold's about, a coin is about
Yes.
130 quid, right? I might, instead of going and buying an outfit, I might go and buy a coin and put it in my safe, right?
Yeah.
How amazing is that? And I don't even need to stress about
Absolutely.
that or capital gains. I can just forget about it. Forget about it. I feel like we are, like
Yeah. Well, the thing is,
this isn't it.
well, look, the beauty of it is it doesn't need to be maintained. Even to the point where, normally I would say to the clients that with physical gold as the example, where do you see the risk in taking ownership of something that it's fully decentralized to us? One of the things that I feel personally is massively underrated with gold. It's fully decentralized, doesn't sit on any bank ledger, on any government database. It's yours.
It's
So
yours.
yeah, exactly.
And if you
Um,
take it to any country, it's gold.
it's gold. It's gold. Absolutely.
It's and it's recognized for its value, which is really interesting because I had a conversation recently about going to a country where they used US dollars and their currency was so being diminished by the fact that they had to trade in dollars and they were going through a massive hyperinflation. And I do believe the more that we bring back some of these traditional assets to give sovereignty to us, as humans and take some of that sovereignty back, it's a really powerful play.
Yes, without a doubt. And even holding gold, people are like, well, I'm not really sure if I want to, hold it at home. The reality is, if you work with someone like ourselves, the only people that actually know you've purchased it is ourselves and the person purchasing it. Home insurers now are very well versed in providing documentation to ensure that it's done safely and securely. And people don't really mind sitting there. I'm not saying I do, but their £40,000 brand new car on their driveway. So,
Yeah.
it's just trying again, it's all about conditioning and understanding that this is something that is achievable for everyone. And Emma, quite right, whether you are someone who buys small proportions at a time or whether you are wanting to do that, there is a play for everyone.
Hey,
And there's an
yeah.
entry for everyone.
Yeah.
So, it does surprise me when you mention, go, well, I haven't got enough money for that. Well, you definitely have, right?
You
Unless,
100%
yeah,
have. I'm going through a really interesting time in my life right now. I'm going through a divorce, but I have still found the space for my kids' Christmas presents. I bought them silver coins,
Okay,
and they were
amazing.
they were not happy they couldn't eat them. The girl
Yes.
said, "Mummy, it's not a chocolate gold coin." I'm like, "You will thank me one day when you get to a certain age in the future where you're going, Mummy, can I have that coin?" Right? What would you rather have in your money box? A few 2p's and pounds that literally, when they raid that money, that piggy,
Yes.
that £10, that pound that they've been putting in every day, £360, right? Well, actually, let's do that as a little, but this is like where my brain's going. You put a pound in, £360, in 10 years' time, diminished at 10% a year on year on year, that 360 quid that you'd save for them is going to be worth hardly anything. It's like when you find someone, someone passes away and they've hid all those notes under their mattress because they're fearful of the banks, but they hid them as pounds.
Right.
Suddenly it's like, oh, great, we found all this money, but it's not worth anything. If you'd have found gold and you then raid their piggy bank and you put in, 100, a coin that's worth £130 every month into that money box is going to be worth something for your child, right?
Well, there's something in
Wow.
our investment guide. We do exactly the same. 1 ounce of gold, 30 years ago would have paid a month's rent in London, and
Hmm.
that same 1 ounce of gold would still pay you 1 month's rent in London today.
Yeah,
So
exactly that. I love
that
that analogy.
that's the point. It retains its value, and if in most cases beats it.
Yeah.
Um,
And it
yeah,
is, and the retention of value is really a myth in this country. We look at it, CPI we target 2%. That is not the real inflation because we need to look at, okay, if 10% a year is how stock markets have been performing. When you look at the MSCI World Index, which is an index that tracks the biggest companies around the world, it's grown by 10% year on year. That is what we need to look at because that is how wealth is accumulating in terms of wealth valuation. And that is therefore why we are seeing massive cost of living going down, far exceeding what we're seeing CPIR, RPI being tracked at. And this is why we are feeling so not wealthy because we're not participating in real wealth accumulation.
no, and I think it starts with education as well.
Mhm.
Again, it all talks about when we're at schools, we're not really educated around money, even to today.
Mhm.
So it's just that would help massively, and also how people can not, like I said, just invest in gold, but just to sort of retain what buying power they have. And I don't think going back to the banks, I've got nothing against the banks. It might sound like I do, but they don't. There's no encouragement there. They want to you keep your money where it's safe and sound and where they can invest it. So that doesn't really help when it comes to try and sort of sit down with a bank and say, I want to, even buying crypto. I'm not saying you buy crypto, but you struggle to buy crypto through a normal standard bank account. And even with gold now, we're working with, a lot of the high street banks now. We bank with a high street bank, but work with the high street banks where they're challenging the client to say, well, are you sure you want to put it into gold?
Yes, the fear mongering. I want to touch on that, Tyrone. I do not give a monkeys if I upset people with lifting the lid on this because fundamentally, people that you cannot through many banks buy Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin is now, they classify Bitcoin as a unicorn currency, just like some of the other cryptos. Now, most of the other cryptocurrencies are play, it is a gamble. Bitcoin is not on the same anymore. It is out there, it is being bought by all the wealth managers around the world. People that know anything about anything own Bitcoin. The US federal government own Bitcoin, right? Let's say it is here, yet in this country, in the UK, you cannot easily put money into Bitcoin, and they block it, and the FCA blocks it. I've had these conversations with many people in that space, and it's so interesting for you to say. They also say, Are you sure you understand the risks of gold? Oh, but we're happy to go and put your money into bank accounts, which loses money every single day. And we're also happy um, enable you to put money into a fund that you don't really understand through the stock market, because we're controlling it or whatever. It's and everything has volatility. So it is literally helping people to understand the risks and understand the implications of not doing these things for themselves and educating themselves and having incredible conversations with people like yourself, Tyrone, that have a different perspective. We're not here to hate the banks. We're here to really help people to see the truth of
Yes.
why they need to not bury their head in the sand and just leave their money in a normal bank account where it's losing money and think, well, yes, I will have my money in my bank account for my spending. I need spending money and maybe I need some liquidity. Beyond that, you should have your money invested in real assets that can hold value over time.
Yeah, and what you said at the beginning, Emma, around what is wealth options. That's what gives you. You've got make sure you can maintain your options. Make sure you've got the ability to determine your own financial future. Because people will become restricted or frightened, and I think most people are scared and frightened. It's due like lack of knowledge. It's
Yeah.
lack of support, and I think people underestimate the power of a question. Ask questions. Ask if you're unsure. Ask, and that's what we try to do. Really, is to give people an opportunity to ask those questions they're unsure of. There's that old saying: "There's no such thing as a stupid question." So please ask. If you need to ask the question, it means there's a gap in your knowledge somewhere. Let's try and fill it, digest that information, and use that information to your advantage moving forward.
Can I touch on that, Tyrone? Because I love that. Let me tell you, your financial advisor doesn't know about much about gold. I will be bold enough to say most financial advisors or investment
Glad
managers
you said
probably don't know about gold because they know about what they know about. I've spent, the best part of 20 odd years trading options. Within that, we did gold. I then spent time as a chartered financial planner. I've then spent time in this, and I don't know everything. Nobody in the whole world knows everything. And this is why there's no such thing as a stupid question. And often you're made to feel stupid when people don't know the answer. So you could go to, you can go to, and the best financial advisors that I know are so transparent and they will say, I don't know, but I will go and find the answer, right? Most people will make you feel stupid because they don't know, they will go, it's just scary, it's volatile, you can't access it through here, and they will shut that down. And that's why I love having conversations with people where they say, I don't know everything. My speciality is gold. I'll tell you a lot about this, but I also know about other things in order to create holistic approach. But then I will work as well with people that know more about Bitcoin. I will work with people that know about investment management. I was talking to Adam Brewer yesterday with one of my clients in a joint call, right? I love to facilitate that conversation so that people can ask uncomfortable questions that feel stupid, that they think they should know the answer to because we don't know the answers. Questions feel uncomfortable until we normalize them and say there's no such thing as a stupid question because anyone that makes you feel stupid, they just don't know.
no, and I think that's the power of having a network, right? Certainly as a within the corporate world, I probably have fully underestimated like my external network from that world coming in as a business owner and developing those networks. Your eyes become much wider to seek again advice, guidance, and also having that sort of community. So I think people underestimate that power of a network and being able to reach out for advice or, oh, sorry, I don't understand that, but I do know someone. That's the most powerful response I feel. I don't know myself, but I do know someone who does.
Mhm.
And that just shows that your network is working for you as well. So Yeah, it's like for us where we are, and with going back to what the market's doing. I
Yeah.
think people do need to feel comfortable to explore. I think people do need to be inquisitive and comfortable to be inquisitive. Um, and if you have any glimmer or uncertainty that you feel something isn't working or is working for you, back to that question, just ask, go seek support, free
Yeah.
information is out there, and
A little bit about the market, Tyrone, because we've got a little bit of time now just to finish off with the markets. Because fundamentally, what is happening at the in the world now with Trump, we've had tariffs come into play. And I feel that when we think, okay, what are the impacts of these tariffs? It's going to create probably inflation for a really, really long time. And because it's going to be harder to export to the US, it's going to be more expensive, imports and exports. Therefore, weaken our currency in the UK. Our currency becomes less valuable in the UK, maybe compared to the US. And we just don't know how this will play out. But what we do know is that if these things are happening with these currencies, gold is a really great play, right? To create that stability in your portfolio, right? Um,
yes,
it's a wonderful thing to have in terms of your wealth if we're seeing all of this volatility, because we can't necessarily, we might have a business where we're struggling with imports, or our earnings are being impacted. But if we're doing a little bit of gold in the background to hedge that for our long-term wealth, we're really helping to mitigate some of the stuff that's happening with Trump that we can't control, that's influencing our long-term buying power with regards to the pounds in the UK, right? And this will be again around the world as well, right?
absolutely, yeah. And look, when we look at that, what's going on, look, that's happening, and it will cause some form of reaction for stock markets and for gold. And as things become a little bit more settled, there'll be some changes. But that's why I don't really, especially when you're looking at that proportion in your portfolio, I don't like to really fully focus too hard on the detail. Just understand what's happening from, like, from an ecosystem perspective, and from a trader's perspective, you need a different view. But if you're looking at a what we specialize in, experts in terms of like physical gold or gold, is to try and sort of just look at everything, because what is about to happen or what has happened in the past, you can sort of see it trend. So
Mm.
gold does correct, again, if you look at it under a microscope, but historically, gold's delivered over 12% year on year for the past 20 years.
Yeah,
So, it,
exactly that.
what we do know is it's consistent.
Why
And so,
is that? We're getting tariffs at the minute. We think that this is new, what Trump is happening. I read the book Currency Wars in 2005. This has been happening
yeah,
for a long time. We've just not had awareness of it. I did because I was a trader and I was like, someone said, you got to read Currency Wars. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to read this book. I'm like, holy moly, we're in a war. We
yeah.
are, we talk about World War One, World War Two. Where is World War Three? It's happening. We just don't see it in the same way that we used to see. We're not physically fighting, but we are, these things are being used to manipulate and damage and hurt other people through weakening their currency.
Yeah, and gold's massively dependent on the dollar. It's always had that relationship. So as the dollar weakens, gold has tended, but I feel gold's decoupled from that now. I feel
Well, it
gold,
has.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
like Bitcoin. And that's the
yeah,
sovereignty. And that is what the power this is why gold is such an important part this is why gold is so important for people to learn about. Stop burying your head in the sand, guys. This is the biggest message that I'm taking it. Give yourself options and through knowledge and start learning and have a conversation with Tyrone. Let's finish on that. Let's because we're coming towards the end of, I try to keep these conversations short, sharp, really manageable. Who is the sort of person that you would want to, who's your ideal client? Who is the sort of person that you would love to have a conversation with if someone's listening to the show today?
So I get asked a lot, what is my ideal client? I think it's someone, Emma, that is a little bit confused with, what's going on in the world. Someone that is fairly risk adverse, and wants something to be able to look at as an option. So whether that's something tangible in their hand that they can keep safe, something to preserve their wealth. Even we're finding ever more increasingly popular is you mentioned your children. So people purchasing it for their young children. So when they reach the age of 18 to fund at university, it's retained its purchasing power. So there's so many tools we can use it for, which is still seen as an investment. So I think, Emma, anyone that's open-minded to want some education, someone that wants to better sort of understand what the world of gold looks like, and people that just feel like they're going to better utilize their money outside of what our class is standard savings.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Tyrone, for this great conversation today. I think we've just only really scratched the surface of what we really believe is the bigger picture here. But fundamentally, it's about keeping it simple. It's about giving people options. It's about raising awareness of why what you do is something that's so needed in the world and in the Southwest.
Absolutely.
So all of your links, if you want to get in touch with Tyrone, all of Tyrone's links are in the show notes. You can connect with Tyrone on LinkedIn. We can add in your website. So, we'll add in all of those links so that people can find you. And fundamentally, I wanted to finish on just thinking a little bit more about oh, it's gone from me. I was going to say something very profound then, and it's literally gone from me. It's gone from my mind. But don't fear reaching out to someone, Tyrone. Get in touch if you're curious. If this is, scratch that itch, like what you said at the start, where you kind of had an itch to scratch. You wanted to make a difference. Reach out and get in touch. Thank you so much for coming on.
Crystal, Emma, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed that. Thank you.
You are more than welcome. Bye for now.
Take care.